but we have people following the story from different angles. Let me turn to Jessica Taneja. She's also following the story in the global media. Jessica, I mean, how is the world looking at this event? I mean, at the happenings, not the event.
Well, certainly it has not come as a surprise, but what has shocked many people is Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's resignation, and of course now leaving the country, and her whereabouts remain unknown or unconfirmed at this point because she's on board with her sister. So of course these developments are being viewed around the world. We will soon get statements from the State Department as well as from Britain and other countries who are watching this situation closely. As another country in the neighborhood, it was Pakistan a few months back, if you recall, and Sri Lanka last year with the economic crisis in 2002 and how things panned so differently for the neighborhood there, and now Bangladesh, and of course not improving in terms of the situation on ground, the peace and stability not intact at this point. Although you heard from the army chief a while ago where he said that a new interim government will be formed and efforts will be made to quell the protests, to assure the protesters as to what they're demanding. Now, Mark, if you'd recall, just a bit of context for our viewers who are just tuning in and probably watching this news for the first time, the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned and is now not in the country. All of this started with anti-quota protests, as we discussed at length, and then soon turned into anti-government protests, eventually leading to the dissolution of a government, and she now resigning. With the army chief has not said that the army will take control or this is any kind of a coup. All those reports have been dismissed. But an interim government where the chiefs of various parties will be present. We're told in the next 5 to 7 hours, we could hear more details on how at least the political formation would look like to bring in some stability and some rest in a country that has been reeling under protest for the last 1 month. More than 300 people have died, Mark, and 100 people just yesterday. That speaks volumes from a country that has been seeing economic distress for a very long time. This has not just been about political unrest, but also about economic distress and, of course, quotas.
Right, let's go across to Ramesh Ramachandran, who's joining us also from the newsroom with more. Ramesh, I mean, as Jessica was saying, the situation is largely economic problems in the surrounding countries of India. Pakistan, Bangladesh, in fact, was an outlier to some extent. It was one of the fast-growing economies, but seems to have fallen into hard times again. And then there is Sri Lanka down south. How is this, playing out in terms of India's neighborhood?
Well, Mark, as you correctly mentioned, there are we can draw a number of parallels with what is happening in Bangladesh as we speak. You mentioned Sri Lanka, you mentioned other countries in India's neighborhood. Another parallel could be the 2011 Arab Spring. This could be, in a sense, the Bangladesh or Dhaka Spring, where a popular government, elected government at that, has been overthrown. The Prime Minister has quit and resigned and left the country already. A destination, as Jessica was mentioning, is still not confirmed. There are reports that she could be traveling to a neighboring country onward to a country of her choice somewhere else, possibly in Europe. So a lot of, as the American saying goes, there are moving parts of the story. But this is extraordinary, Mark. Cataclysmic, seminal, watershed moment in Bangladesh history, coming as it does barely days before the anniversary of the 15th August 1975 assassination and coup against Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, whose daughter happens to be Sheikh Hasina nonetheless. Now, that said, the army chief is very clear. He wants to stabilize things as quickly as possible. He set a deadline, to talk to the president and form an interim government as early as possibly tonight or tomorrow. We've had to wait and watch how things pan out. But as things stand now, Mark, this is nothing short of unprecedented. An anti-quota protest morphing into an anti-government protest, encompassing a large section of society, including students, activists, actors, academics, professors, jurists. And this, we are talking, by the way, of Sheikh Hasina, who is the longest-serving PM of Bangladesh. She came to power in '96. Ruled for the first time, for the first term till 2001, and then from 2009 onwards, she has won every consecutive election. She has been in power for 15 years and counting until the protesters stormed the residence and forced her out of power.
Indeed, let's get some more perspective from Professor Bharadwaj, who's with us. Professor Bhardwaj, can you hear us? You were saying something and we couldn't hear it. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
No, can you repeat the question?
No,
I could
actually,
not hear.
I was just going to ask you to comment on developments, but you know, I'll put it into more focus. We've seen that Sheikh Hasina has been a popular leader. Now you had brought in the issue of what is this interim government going to be like, whether it can immediately, you know, contain the situation, create a, you know, sort of bring law and order back into place. Is this, in your opinion, how is this going to be possible? How is it going to do? How is this going to play out?
No, she has been popular on her economic policies and economic performance, the way she has brought the development in the country. She has been considered like she has brought the pride of Bangladesh by building Poda Bridge, Kanpuli Tunnel, and number of other projects and ports and all that. But politically, she has been criticized by the opponents, particularly on the issue of democracy, that she's not promoting grassroots democracy. She's promoting moreover nepotism, and she's not conducting union parishads and municipal elections in Bangladesh. That has, and further, it has been criticized in 2014 the elections where the opposition political party has boycotted it. Now, point is that while interim government would be there, who will join the interim government? Both the BNP's social constituency is army. The Jamaat-e-Islam has been known as anti-liberation force. Jamaat-e-Islam has been known for mushrooming fundamentalism and extremism in Bangladesh. The Jatiya Party is again a party has been founded by the military regime. So my point is there that if there is really a neutral and independent civil society people becomes the caretaker government's member, then that it would go well. And the army will take care. Like the Fakhruddin Ahmed was the chief advisor of the caretaker government in 2006 to 2008. They have come out with good number of policies, particularly against the extremists and fundamentalists and corruptions and all that, and many of the leaders behind the bar. So if this government would also come out with these policies and will definitely look forward these kinds of cleansing operations and satisfy the youth. They are demanding for jobs, they are demanding for employment, they are demanding that there should be less inflation and the people should have find the basic goods and good essential goods on the affordable price. So is that interim government will be in position to do? These are the big questions that we'll see that how much the mandate the interim government will have to survive in Bangladesh, because Bangladesh has the history of the coup and counter coup. You can see that 75, 76, 70, and then after Irshad also, and then there were the movement against Irshad, and none of the governments were safe. Though the Sheikh Hasina has given relative or comparative stability to the government, and because of that comparative stability, that number of the investors had attracted towards Bangladesh for the developmental projects. So I'm still looking forward to have a stable government in Bangladesh, and how much this interim government will protect the ethos and values of democracy, will conducting a free and fair election. So these are the bigger questions that I'm looking, and how the West would look that to ensure the human rights and democracy in Bangladesh, because Bangladesh, you know, they love change. They love to change time and again. They would revolt. They revolted Irshad. They revolted against Sheikh Khalida Zia in 2006, and they now revolted against Sheikh Hasina. So who will be next? If they are coming really a genuine third front and progressive and development lover liberal people in Bangladesh, then definitely Bangladesh you can see a better future in the case of democracy. But otherwise, you know, there will be political instability, and that would adversely impact on the economic development of Bangladesh.
So let's take the questions you've raised or the situation you've raised to Naval Singh Parmar, who's our correspondent in Dhaka. The political vacuum, Mr. Parmar. So that's, I mean, and there are some parties that are already supported by the army. Jessica was saying that there is actually no army coup. So I mean, at the end of the day, who's taking over that political shape? I mean, the political vacuum, that space. Who's taking that space in this interim government?
Actually, there are two sets of political party. One is centered around Awami League, and they were the coalition partner of the Awami League government means the Sheikh Hasina lead government, and there were 14 parties. And the second group of political party is aligned with the BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party. In this period, in the last 1 year, I have observed that the political credibility of Awami League due to anti-incumbency and for the Bangladesh Nationalist Party due to its away from ground reality, politics away from ground reality. So we Awami League lead coalition were facing a anti-incumbency. At the same time, BNP they were looking up towards the power, not toward down for the common people. What common people are suffering, what they are facing, BNP was not seeing, and I have never seen any protest or rally against the price rise, against the unemployment, against the devaluation of Taka from the main opposition party during election or before 6 months before election. In last 2 years, the economic factors, the developmental agenda of Sheikh Hasina, people appreciate it, and I also appreciate. But there are two parts. One is mega project, and second is pro-poor or pro-people development activity. So in last 2 years, Taka earlier it was equivalent to rupees. 75 to 80 taka a dollar, and at that time rupees was also same position, means taka and rupees were more or less equivalent. In last 2 years, taka devaluated to 124. Now in crab market it is 125 taka per dollar, and rupees is at 80 rupees. Means you can see the 45 around 50% devaluation or of taka compared to rupees. So purchasing power of people reduced very hugely. And the salary, in last 2 years, the salary component of the common people, earlier also a common minimum salary was around 8,000 rupees. And after these 2 years also, it is around 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 rupees per a month. So the devaluation of taka, very high inflation, and the scarcity of employment opportunity. These were the major factor. There were many mega projects which are constructed by under the Sheikh Hasina regime, and that changed the landscape of Bangladesh. That I agree. Mega project she has done very well. But at the same time, in last 5 years, most of the mega projects are funded by the foreign countries. And Bangladesh took a huge loan from the wealthy countries, our neighbor also. And due to that, the debt servicing of Bangladesh, which is increased a lot in last 2 years. So the whatever the revenue generated by the government, most of that was being used to fund some mega project, and at the same time for the debt servicing. And with this mega project, corruption increased manifold. So you might have heard about the media reports that the former army chief of Bangladesh, former police chief of Bangladesh have been freed the country, and their property have been confiscated under the corruption charges. So there is a rampant corruption, and the people were tired of the corruption, inflation, and unemployment. So they were not against the Hasina government before 2 years. But in last 2 years, the public perception changed a lot. At the same time, opposition party was never talking about their flight, their issue. So common people don't have much expectation from the opposition also. Meanwhile, the religion-based some organization were spreading their legs and arms in the fertile ground for the religious agenda. But most of the common people around, I can say that more than 70% of the common people, they are not with the Awami League or they are not with the BNP. They want a third front kind of thing. Something new will be there, and their role model is Indian democracy.
Fair enough.
Many people say that we should have a democracy like India.
Thanks for that very in-depth response, Mr. Parmar. It gives us plenty to talk about. Let me turn to Ramesh Ramachandran once again. Ramesh, Mr. Parmar was talking about politics that's, divorced of reality, the ground reality. The parties didn't seem to understand the real problems that the people were facing. Do you see this as a time when perhaps non-state actors could perhaps start fishing in troubled waters?
Well, it should not come as a surprise, Mark, that forces inimical to Dhaka's interests will try to fish in troubled waters. There can be no surprises there. And we saw that in the case of the students' protests. Remember, the Jamaat-e-Islami and the BNP students' wing were mixed, intertwined with the the other protesters who were drawn from various colleges and universities. So some opposition involvement will always be there, and it has been in the case of the recent protests as well. But that said, Mark, the big question that Nawal Singh was mentioning, look where Bangladesh was until very recently. This is a Prime Minister who was elected as recently as 11th of January this year, and barely 7 months later, she has been ousted from power. And this is a country which was doing economically reasonably better than its neighbors.
Right.
It was to graduate from the LDC country to a middle-income country in the next couple of years. So things were looking up. Things were not that bleak or as bleak as some people made it out to be. But what got the government in trouble was its response to the anti-quota protest to begin with. It saw that the anti-quota protests were primarily targeted by its political opponents, namely the BNP and the BNP students' wing and the Jamaat-e-Islami. But the fact remains that this student movement morphed into something bigger, something of a civil disobedience movement against the government, and that, I think, was to become to the undoing of the government of the day in Dhaka, led by the Prime Minister Hasina. Now, where does Bangladesh go from here? It's a million-dollar question, Mark. Like the army chief said, everything depends on the president, whether he agrees to the proposal to form an interim government, possibly led by a jurist, as it has been in the past when a caretaker government was in power in Bangladesh. It remains to be seen, but the army chief, for one, is trying to extend an olive branch to the protesters, saying, please stop your violence, trust the army to do the right thing, and we will get back to you at the earliest after talking to the president and also in touch with the other political parties, all shades of public and political opinion that exists in Bangladesh.
Right. Let's turn once again to Jessica, who's also following the story. Jessica, from the point of view of the political space, it seems that the people on the street don't seem to like any political party. So in that kind of a situation, in this kind of a vacuum, now that the army seems to be in control, I mean, it could be just an interim phase till things improve. But it's a pretty fluid situation, isn't it? There's neither confirmation nor denial that this could continue for a reasonable period of time.
Well, absolutely. Uncertainty still prevails on the ground in many parts of the country at this point, as you and I speak, Mark. And if you see the protesters on the streets, as you and I are talking right now, there have been various times and various instances where the mobs have taken over or, torched houses of the politicians. Not to forget, a lot of, Awami League officials, their official residences in Dhaka were torched. The national broadcaster of Bangladesh was also lit up just few weeks ago when the protests had started. So of course the situation not getting under control at all, but with the protesters initially demanding Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's resignation, which is something they have got now. The path to stability will not be smooth, and to tell the protesters that the situation will be improved in a sense where their demands will be clearly met, especially with the quota system, well, that the Supreme Court took care of last week when the protests did come down. But again, with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's meetings and her suggestions and her response to the protests, as also Ramesh was pointing out, exactly that has what led Bangladesh to this point, which nobody of course had expected. But the situation right now unfolding suggests that these protests would somehow come to a rest, as now the army has assured that the president will make sure a caretaker government is going to take care of most of the issues that currently trouble the protesters. And of course, the leaders of various parties who have joined in from the anti-quota protest and now anti-government protests with the absence of Sheikh Hasina, things could normalize, but again, uncertainty prevails, and there could be those elements who'll try and fish in troubled waters, as we were discussing earlier.
We'll turn once again to Professor Bharadwaj. Professor Bharadwaj, is this the the end of the political road as far as Sheikh Hasina is concerned, or is there some sort of goodwill? After all, she has done a lot of work, as you were saying as well, as Naval Singh was saying, in terms of building infrastructure. She has ruled the country. She's one of the most popular leaders for a reasonable period of time. As things, if things settle down, perhaps people will reflect back and say, she has some good qualities.
I do have one very, very particular, very specific reference here. While you were talking to the Bangladeshi people, they had very less grievances against Bangabandhu Mujibur Rahman. And while you were coming with the Sheikh Hasina, the people were not much unhappy with the Sheikh Hasinas, but people were more unhappy with her associates, the other party men, Qadir, Pukran, all these leaders. They were more involved in corruption. That all Awami League, student wing, Chhatra League was also involved in goonism and vandalism and all that. So I think that unpopularity is not will not go in the account of Sheikh Hasina. It would go to the other political leaders. So there are opportunities, there is chance that in future there will be free and fair elections, because the country will remember Sheikh Hasina. As the country remembers Bangabandhu for the freedom or for the independence, the people will remember Sheikh Hasina for her developmental projects. And I'm sure if there will be free and fair elections, and there will be a time then she will come back and she will rule the country, because she had a very challenging task in the last decade. While you are balancing with China, while you are balancing with India, while you are balancing with Americans wanted something else. In Bangladesh, the Chinese, they wanted something else in Bangladesh. They wanted to develop deep sea port. They wanted to develop different other projects that she did not give them. The Americans, they wanted some bases from even in 1998. She did not give them. So she had maintained very balanced approach and cultivated very strong developmental tie with India. Let's develop together. That kind of approach had been adopted. She was willing to join Indian Act East policy. So my point is that the people, they will definitely remember about the developmental projects. Though the democracy issues were there, but democracy, the people were more unhappy with her associates and member of parliaments. Right. What happened, that there were 24 elections, and then in that election 69 independent candidates, but though they were Awami Leaguers, won the election. So people, the Awami Leaguers, what she had been protected and patronized, were not the right people, and people were not happy. But other Awami Leaguers who were not getting enough chance, they were happy with them. So I'm sure that she will come back again with the same strength as she came in 2008. And because the second very important point, the opposition political forces are not they have very bad track record. Do you want BNP? Do you want Jamaat? What they did in 2006 to 2001 to 2006, that Bangladeshi people will never like it. So point is that unless until you do not have an alternative political force in Bangladesh, then what you will do? And you will not even carry with the army, because now the politically and socially the society is highly mobilized. The civil society is very active in Bangladesh. They will not bear army in power for a long time, as they did not. They revolted in 111 in 2007. You can see. So these are the things. Then democracy will come, and Sheikh Hasina will have a better chance to come back.
Indeed. We'll go back to Mr. Naval Singh Parmar. Naval Singh, as Professor Bharadwaj was saying, I mean, the people are very active now, so the army probably doesn't have or cannot have that kind of control like an army dictatorship. So in this context, this is a fluid situation. So what are the developments? I mean, you have an update, I'm told.
Actually, I want to make two things clear here. One is the role of third front, or the student coordinator and the intellectual or the other social leaders who were involved in this movement. Their role will be very crucial in the national or caretaker government. So it is not the all-party government, means the old horse will not be there. The new faces and the neutral faces and the third front faces will be there in the caretaker government. And that will happen because of the power of social media. Social media is very crucial element in Bangladesh politics now. Mainstream media is a second thing, but the people here, Bangladesh is youngest nation than India. The youth number of youths percentage wise is more here in compared to India also, and they have a mobile, they are educated, they have a means to communicate, means to whatever they don't like, they can say we don't like it and we want to change it. In fact, there were a Digital Security Act. Due to that, many people were afraid about making some videos and comments on the social media. But since the regime, if the regimes change and police fears of police and detective branch, if there is not there, then the social media can play a very important role, and that is that will decide the next course of action here in Bangladesh, not the Bangladesh army, because army also can't control the euphoria of student.
Right, exactly. I'll take that to Ramesh. Ramesh, so you were mentioning the Arab Spring. You know, I mean, that is a euphoria to some extent. And we can see that perhaps the heavy hand can't really function against this kind of a movement and in the social media age. So, I mean, what's your prediction? How's this going to play out?
Well, Mark, a couple of things here. One, nature abhors a vacuum. It remains to be seen who fills the vacuum that's being created in Dhaka this evening as we speak. Who will fill in the vacuum left by the exit or ouster of Sheikh Hasina? As Naval Singh was mentioning, it need not or necessarily come from the existing political shades of opinion. It could be someone completely new, and that will be dictated by the civil disobedience movement launched by the students and other sections of civil society. It could be a jurist, a retired justice. It could be somebody from with the army background, a civil society member. We don't know yet. But what we do know is that this will take shape in the next several hours or possibly days. As the army chief mentioned, he will talk to the president and go as per the constitution of the country, which lays out the precedents and steps to be taken in times of such crises and circumstances. So all eyes on the president as we speak, what he does or does not choose to do, and also the way the political parties respond to this challenge or the crisis in terms of forming an interim national caretaker government till such time as the situation eases to restore full democracy in Bangladesh. Now, that said, from an Indian perspective, Mark, one needs to also factor in what New Delhi might be thinking as we speak, given the circumstances obtaining in its immediate neighborhood. Like I said, there are forces inimical to India's interests. They could, create further chaos in Bangladesh. As I mentioned, there are, many forces in India's neighborhood who might be willing to take, as you mentioned, fish in troubled waters. So we have to wait and watch. That said, also the fear of refugees, people pouring in across the porous border into Indian states in the northeast as well as in Bengal. It remains to be seen. But India would surely be keeping a close tab on the situation as we speak, especially given report that the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, now deposed PM Sheikh Hasina, might also be wanting to keep India in the loop.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Ramesh Ramachandran, Professor Bharadwaj, Naval Singh Parmar, and Jessica Taneja. Thank you for filling us in with developments that are as they are happening in Dhaka. And for the moment, we're going to conclude this edition of DD India News Hour, but news and updates will continue here on DD India. We'll continue to follow this story, which is developing rapidly in Bangladesh, a political vacuum being created with Sheikh Hasina having been forced to resign and flee the country. There is going to be an interim government there. The army chief has spoken to the country and asked for peace.